Do you want a history lesson? Well, by the title of the episode, you might have thought you'd be getting it, but you're not. I'm Charlie.
And I'm Cory.
And this week we will be discussing the self-titled debut by a band called Franz Ferdinand, named after an archduke whose assassination led to World War I in part, but they were also a 2000s indie rock band. So, funny how that works.
I love how the band tries to be like, we hope that one day when people say Franz Ferdinand, they'll just think of us and not the Archduke. but really, and if you look into it, they were talking about they really just love the iteration or the alliteration of it.
Yes.
Which is crazy, but it stuck.
It stuck. And so as I said, this was their self-titled debut. So we are discussing a debut for the first time in a while on this show. I feel like we haven't done a debut album in a while.
Yeah, man. I like it.
So that's exciting to be doing. I know you picked this album, so what was your experience with it at the time? Like, what was it like?
We're going 2004, or 3 years before Britney, so we're going back in time a little bit here. For me, 2004, I mean, I was in my early 20s. I was probably listening to the most music of my life at this point, and I was playing a lot of music still back then. It was a self-proclaimed blurry time for me, but this album, I remember, my best friend hit me with this album, and there wasn't much that we would listen to that we didn't enjoy together. And in the time, and we'll touch on this throughout, but in the time of Modest Mouse and that sort of avant-garde rock, or some went to call it art rock sound, he was like, I got these guys, Franz Ferdinand. I was like, all right, well, let's throw them on. And the way I remember it, we didn't stop listening to this album for like 2, 3, 4 weeks straight. There's so much on this album as a musician, especially as a younger musician, that I didn't necessarily know or had heard in abundance, that I was enthralled with this album. I was straight up infatuated with the sound on this album. It was so unique, and it was so exactly what I needed at that point, because I feel like, I was coming out of the 90s, and we were oversaturated with that, I won't say sad sound, but that melancholy sound that was starting to pick up in the early 2000s. So for this one, I know we say it every once in a while, but this was another breath of fresh air. This was a breath of icy cold air that I had never breathed before in my life, to be exact. So if you can't tell, back then I loved this album.
Yes, and now, when this album came out, I was not the target audience because I was 7 years old. So I didn't hear it until this week, but looking into it, I do agree with you that it's a breath of fresh air into popular music at this time, because this was different. So this is a band from Scotland, and they're not actually all born in Scotland, but they met and formed there. This was their first album. They recorded it on Domino Records, which was an indie label. They wanted to do a small label that would actually be artists first, not one of the big major labels that they'd get lost in the shuffle in, which was a smart move for a band such as this, I believe. And Tory Johansson was their producer. He was best known for working with the Cardigans, best known for their hit Love Fool. This is quite a change from Love Fool.
Quite a change.
But much better, in my opinion. That song actually irritates me, but that's not what we're here to talk about. So, yeah, this album was released on February 9th, 2004, and the lead single for it had already gotten into the top 50 UK, and just kind of blew up in the UK and Scotland from there, and it ended up crossing over to the States. So, yeah, in the UK, it made it up to number 3 on the charts, number 2 in Scotland, but in the US, it made it up to 32, which may not sound that great, but it stayed on the charts for over a year. So it sold steadily, and it was 111 on the year-end chart, which is impressive because it only peaked at 32.
Now, going back to my best friend, he was really on top of that stuff. We're back in the CD store junkie days. Like, you know, it was CD stores were dying, but like where we would go in and grab fresh albums. So talking about it being on the charts and rising on the charts or just charting period for that whole entire year, or selling for that whole entire year. I'm sorry, not charting for the whole entire year. Long story short, it was something that we watched. I remember it coming on MTV and being like, calling my buddy and being like, "Yeah, it's on MTV. Like Franz Ferdinand's hitting right now." And we just sat back and watched that fire burn. In all honesty, you know, watched it just turn into everybody jamming on it, which was great because we were sharing it in the car while we were smoking a doob, you know, and really just having it for us. And then people could relate to it. Shit, most of the stuff we listened to back then, not many people related to anyways. So it was a cool thing. Even the band was like, we couldn't believe we hit UK top 50. You know,
Yeah.
like, are you joking? We're up there, which I always loved about them. They always came over to me through their music and through interviews that I had seen and whatnot as a very down to earth indie band. You know, they were that indie band in my brain. But yeah, they was around for forever, and we watched it grow.
Yeah, and it definitely appealed to a certain audience because this was not popular music of 2004. This was not what it sounded like. I'm going to get a bit more into that later on, but for some context, the top-selling album of 2004 was Usher's Confessions. Like this R&B hip-hop album. That was the sound of 2004. If you look at the hits, that's what it is. This was not that, and undoubtedly, there were listeners sick of that sound and wanting something different. And here come these guys from Scotland to give it to them. And they did a good job doing it, I think.
They did. I agree. They did a good job doing it.
Yes. And this album won the Mercury Music Prize in 2004, and it was nominated for Best Alternative Album at the Grammys. It lost to Wilco's A Ghost Is Born, not an album I know by them. I only know a couple of theirs, but not that one.
I mean, that's not... When we talk about those losses, usually it's like somebody losing to a total different genre and a total different feel. That probably didn't make them too sad. You know what I'm saying? Like that was one that's shared amongst artists and like, all right, man, I'm down with that album. Or I would think, because Wilco was Wilco was in that same kind of listener pool. I would think. Yeah.
Most definitely. This is the alternative pool. And,
exactly.
they were admittedly a bit more established. That was not their first album. That was like their fourth or fifth.
Oh, yeah.
This was the first. So not always easy for the newbies to get in there, but they did pretty well. They sold over 3.6 million copies worldwide of this album, platinum in the US, and over 1 million in the UK too. So not the biggest album we've covered, but for an indie band from Scotland, pretty fucking impressive, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, you're sitting at the 47th Grammys, and you literally earlier that year were playing a UK. I'm trying not to use the word punk, but I'm just going to, whatever. I can't dance around it. You were not only playing inside of, but you were supporting like Interpol and bands like that inside of a UK punk scene. And now you're sitting at the Grammys. So it definitely was a not as big as we're used to numbers wise. But as far as the musicality and reaching people, wow, it reached them.
Yeah. And unexpectedly, but deservedly, in my opinion, because I enjoyed going on this journey. I'm glad you picked this one. I'll say that now.
You know, most of our longtime listeners know that we don't really pump each other up or try to even talk about... Actually, I don't know if anybody knows this. When we jump into this, we don't say, hey, how'd you like it? What was this? Let's touch on points. We just go at it. You know, we have our own notes. And that's, for me, or I think I could speak for both of us, that's the fun of this whole entire thing. But I I had a great feeling that you would enjoy this album, and it's one of the reasons I picked it. Not only just because I wanted to share it with all of our listeners, with you as well, but I had a feeling you'd enjoy this. This is, I'm going to my opinion on this. This is a hard one not to enjoy, I feel like.
I agree, but maybe you were just trying to be charitable after last month.
No, Charlie, I was not. And I don't have people out there thinking I'm a charitable kind of guy. But no, yeah. Well, with you in mind, I was like, let's do this, bad boy.
Yes. Yes. Well, yeah, I will say it's more in my vein than the last one we did that you picked. So
Heard that.
Oh,
Nobody gets to see your face, and Charlie didn't know what I was going to pick. So last week when I said Franz Ferdinand, I looked at him and he was like, "Ah, shit, here we go again." And he does a great job with a good smile and keeps chugging along, and even did, and off the top of his head, the only track he knew was "Take Me Out." So last week's close was, "Take Us Out," or I can't remember the exact one, but you did it right off the top of your head. But I could see a little bit of fear in the eyes, like, "Oh shit, here we go again."
Who knows? But that being said, let's take ourselves out on a journey with Franz Ferdinand.
This episode is brought to you by State Farm. You might say all kinds of stuff when things go wrong, but these are the words you really need to remember. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. They've got options to fit your unique insurance needs, meaning you can talk to your agent to choose the coverage you need, have coverage options to protect the things you value most, file a claim right on the State Farm mobile app, and even reach a real person when you need to talk to someone. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
This album begins with a song called Jacqueline, and it begins with this spare acoustic verse, and I'm like shocked by it. It was not what I was expecting to start the album. I was like, ooh, and it's a dark lyric. Jacqueline was 17 working on the desk when Ivor, I'm not remembering, peered above a spectacle, forgetting he had wrecked a girl. And I'm like, whoa, this is dark. But then it builds up, rocks out, and it's always better on holiday. We only work when we need the money, which truer words have never been spoken.
Never been spoken. How great is that hook? It's always better on holiday. That's why we only work when we need the money. Oh, God, I love that line.
I do too, but honestly, that first verse gives me chills, though. I think that's the best part of the song. It gives me chills.
I thought about you on my re-listens, but I also tried, and I always try to put myself a little bit in the shoes of me when I first listened, and I was the same way. Like, I immediately had goosebumps when he starts. It's something about his voice, man. It's a really unique but really strong, and it can hang on its own a cappella. And what a dark way to open this album for the listener that it's expecting. Like, if you knew their singles and you were expecting to hear like bangers, immediately you're like, whoa, but it just seamlessly works its way into Jacqueline. And now we're off and running. We've got a syncopated strum and a heavy bass line. Before we even know it, we come out of this beautiful a cappella verse, and here we are running. It's such a feel-good track, and it celebrates the freedom of living. Like, it's that punk mentality, man. We only work when we need the money. Live life, love life, and yeah, I love the start of this album.
Yes, and it was a tribute to an art school friend of theirs named Jacqueline, so she must have been a fun girl.
There you go. That's awesome.
That's the vibe I'm getting. Yeah. This one and other songs on the album, the first listen, I was a bit like, I'll know it was still a bit odd, but you do have to listen more than one time, I think, to appreciate this one. I know I did. With second, third listens, I appreciate like this construction a lot more.
Heard. Yeah, there's definitely layers throughout this album that really benefit from multiple listens, in my opinion.
Most definitely. And another song like that, can be the next one. Track number 2, Tell Her Tonight. I know last week you said there were people who compared this band to the Beatles. If any song on this album reminds me of the Beatles, I would actually say it's this one. It really does have that 1964 Beatles vibe, I feel like, but a bit updated, of course. And admittedly, it's also short and catchy, and I think because of that, it also gives me that vibe. It's a good rocker.
It is. I think some of the old vibe that I feel listening to this is a lot of those harmonies when they're doing tonight. Yeah, I love that harmony. This track starts off with that just sliding bass line that almost makes you think that it's going to go slow again, but we end up at a great pace. We're still strolling on the album. The chromatic, the bridge, the way it chromatically goes up and like down half steps, I love. And for me, like after a million listens, it almost gives me the feeling of going back and forth about Telling Her Tonight, because this song is in my opinion, a guy who's back and forth about telling her, you know, how it is, how he feels, period. And you feel that through the music, but for me, most intensely in the bridge with these half-step chromatic up and downs.
Yeah, I never thought of that, but you're more familiar with this song than me, so...
Yeah, but yeah, check it out. Listen to it, because it's almost like throughout the song, he's on his heels, then he's full on, then he's on his heels, and the refrain is full on, let's do it tonight, yeah, you know, raging. And then it falls back into almost like a timid start to each verse. Or a cool way to look at it, I guess.
Yeah, I think so. So, yeah, Tell Her Tonight, but another good tune, but in a way, it's kind of just a warm-up for what's about to happen.
Yeah.
Track number 3, it's the one and only Take Me Out, the album's big hit. I mean, if you haven't heard this song, the most distinguishable part about it is that it has a major tempo change in it. So it starts off as just this straight rock song, and that's what you think you're going to get. And then it goes into this disco rock song with this dance music percussion. And I want to say, I think that's so cool, because if we go back to 1979, there was this huge anti-disco backlash, primarily from rock fans. They were like, no, we hate disco. We don't like it going together. The rock stars who tried to do it were called sellouts all the time. And now here's this band 25 years after that, making it their own and making it cool. And I think that's awesome. And they also admitted they wanted to make music that appealed to women as well as men. And this is a song that'll get you the dance, and they definitely accomplished that. I will say that.
They did. And you're right. This song never stops giving. You know, I think one of the most iconic parts, or one of the most iconic things that it's given us, is that call and answer guitar riff in the middle, a guitar and vocal riff. And they have been said to have been inspired by Howlin' Wolf on that, which is wild to hear. But you really do. You get this wild post-punk sound that changes throughout, but keeps you dancing. I wanted to touch on this in our intro, but I was going to hold it till later. Even though we're doing an indie art rock album, we're still on this new sound mentality that we've been exploring in the 2000s so far, and we're still dancing in the 2000s so far. And a lot of this album for me is super danceable.
Oh, I completely agree. And a lot of people did, I guess, with this song. So yeah, this was the hit of the album. It was the second single. It made it up to number 3 in the UK. And it also made it to number 3 on the alternative charts in the US. It made it to 66 on the Hot 100, which doesn't sound great, but here's my point I alluded to a bit earlier. It's kind of a miracle this charted on the Hot 100 at all.
I'm so glad you said that.
Because this is, look at the charts of 2004. This is not the sound of it. This is the year of crunk. The hits are hip-hop and R&B songs for the most part. Every number 1 hit actually fell into either one of those categories this year. I mean, the number one song the week this track peaked was Lean Back. Great party song, but not the sound of this. And even for rock music, it didn't sound like this. The top bands were people like Nickelback and Three Doors Down, Hoobastank did The Reason this year. That was the sound of mainstream rock in 2004. And undoubtedly, there were people who didn't like that. There was a subset of people who I'm sure just didn't like hearing that. They felt it wasn't real. They felt it was artificial. They wanted something new. And I knew if I were my age now and I'd heard this in 2004, I would have thought, wow, this is so cool to hear something that's just a breath of fresh air away from all this artificial stuff.
You hit it on the head. I mean, that is such a great point and a profound point inside of these 2000s. And being right there and watching this, it was crazy because this one fit in. So the people that were looking for this breath of fresh air that we're talking about right now, that we're trying to get out of the sound and listen for something new, once, as I remember it, once it hit MTV, there wasn't really anybody who ever hated on this. You know what I'm saying? Like anybody I talked to, Take Me Out would be on the radio and they'd be jamming. Regardless of genre, regardless of preference, this one was widely accepted from what I remember.
I believe that. I wasn't there. I think if any song were to have been widely accepted in America, this was the one. Because this is a very Scottish UK album in a lot of ways. So this one doesn't really contain references to that region specifically. This was the one that could cross over, and it managed to do so. And even it could appeal to the dance fans, which also not the dominant sound of this time, but there were still dance pop hits out there. And I'm sure some of those same people would jam to Take Me Out, or heck, even some of the crunk listeners, probably. They could dance to this as well as Lean Back, I guess.
You know, I should have looked it up because I had thought about it, but this was the first one that I remember. I'm sure there was more, but this is the first one I remember that made it onto the Guitar Hero / Rock Band rhythm game too, just adding to its acceptance.
Yes, but I have this to say. Regardless of chart placement, in the 2000s, there is one badge of honor that proves that you had a hit. Kids Bop did a cover of your song.
That's real. That is real.
And yes, there is a Kids Bop cover of Take Me Out. I listened to it so you don't have to.
Now I'm gonna have to, but I love it.
Actually, the arrangement was not bad. The arrangement was actually pretty well done and faithful to the original. Shouting Kids, yeah, they sucked, but that's every Kids Bop song ever. So, but yes,
yeah,
Kids Bop 8 closes out with a cover of Franz Ferdinand's Take Me Out.
Get out of here. There you go. That's right, though. You're totally right. That is how you measure yourself in the 2000s.
Yes. And also, another way to know it, Weird Al included this song in one of his polka medleys on his Straight Outta Linwood album, too. Also awesome.
That's great. Pure acceptance. I love to hear that.
Yeah, so Take Me Out, it's that jam. But Take Me Out is going to take us out into the next song. Track number 4, The Dark of the Matinee. Very cool title, first off. And when I talked about there being really specific regional references, this is the main song I was referring to. So it's about dreaming of a better life and telling Terry Wogan about it, who was a famous British chat show host. I found out about him from doing the Share podcast, actually, because when she went across the pond, she had some great interviews with him, including this gem.
Do you go jogging like Madonna to keep fit?
Well, you mean like my best friend Madonna?
Yeah. I thought that was a subtle way to drag her in, you understand?
Yes. I will fit Cher or Madonna in any way I can. So even with Franz Ferdinand. So there we go. But the song is really about how that dream is not what it's cracked up to be. And the title came from bassist Bob Hardy saying that the dark of a matinee was a utopian environment to play in, which is interesting.
I love that feeling because the dark of the matinee shares a unique thing for me that only one other thing really has, and that would be the 24-hour gambling in a casino. And what I say there is they're the only two places that I ever forget that it's daytime outside. And I'm surprised to walk out from it to daytime. So I love the thought of this being a utopian place to perform or even be is inside of the dark of the matinee. I love that.
Yes, so do I for that matter. Yeah, I think this is a really clever song. I just love what they did here. And it is a bit local to Britain, but you know what? That's okay. That was their reality. And this was another top 10 hit in the UK and Scotland. It didn't cross over to the US. I'm sure it was just too local to that region again, but still an awesome song. For sure. Awesome song.
Most definitely. This is the song that I would show people to showcase this album. Whether they had heard Take Me Out or not, this was the song that I always chose back then to share with everybody as the track that if you jam on this, you can jam on the whole album. Like you were talking about before, it being this beautiful daydream of a boy walking from school. This dream is also broken up inside of the song by its own craziness. And I love that because the verse and the refrain mimic this in where we're living this awesome dream. Like I'm talking to Terry Wogan, and then it gets so crazy that the dreamer realizes that it's a dream. And it's mimicked by this crescendo verse to refrain and then back down almost to a whisper. I always thought that was super, super sick. That dream sense that the verse brings is it's almost haunting for me. And I love that it's the dreamer getting taken out of it is when we really jam into the meat and potatoes of this song. One of my faves. Can't say that enough. This is definitely the one for me. No spoilers, but this.
And another thing I want to say, I looked up live videos for the album, and this one goes off live. The crowd is so into it. I saw a video from the 2004 Reading Festival, and you could tell they loved doing this song. The crowd loved it, and I also love their clothes in it. Alex Capranos and Nick McCarthy both have red button-downs. Love that.
Hell yes.
Nick's had stars on it, too. It was awesome, I thought.
Hell yes.
But, yeah, just the energy in it was infectious to me. Sadly, Nick McCarthy's no longer in the band. He left a few years ago.
Yeah. They've had a few in and outs.
Yeah.
And stayed true to themselves and strong.
Yeah. I think it's pretty awesome that they have a female drummer now because that's sadly to many a bit of a novelty. We don't see too many female drummers up on stage. So I love that they did that. Good for them.
Oh, yeah.
Good on you, Franz Ferdinand. We're getting off topic. Back to 2004, not the present day, with track number 5, Off Axis, or On Axis in English. That's a German title. And this one, it's about a boy who's been rejected and it's eating him up. And this is another really disco song here. It might be the most disco song on the album, actually. I love that beat, first of all. I love that disco sound. It's great. And then this last verse has this boy comparing his pain to Jesus's crucifixion, basically. But it's so tongue-in-cheek that you can't be offended by it.
Yeah.
I mean, I was raised Catholic. I know you were too. And you're taught, like, no, you don't make fun of God like that. You don't compare your thing to the crucifixion. Like, you don't do what Madonna did on her tour in 2006. That's not okay. That's what I was taught as a kid, at least. But this is so goofy and funny that you just can't be offended by it. These guys have a great sense of humor, and I think it's nowhere more evident than in that passage.
I agree with you there. This one, tongue-in-cheek is a great way to put it, but also more, in my opinion, their storytelling prowess as far as their narratives. This one, for me, is one of the more strictly narrative of the album, and I love it. You know, you automatically get this sense of being spun on your axis by, you know, rejection and like you said, eating yet alive. And this song bangs too. I mean, the bass line on this song is the song for me. And it's a slow walk that turns into a run, as far as the song goes. The refrain where they're like, she's not special, with the guitar singing out behind it. I love that. And then the bridge goes ahead and mimics that, but like for almost like a measure longer, until we're back to like this minimal sound again, you know, that boom, boom, boom. I love that, man. What such a great track. And the drums on the outro. I love this. This is as far as musicality, this is up there on this album for me. This is a true testament of musicianship.
Look what you've done, boys. You made another banger.
Yeah, you got it. Look what you've done, boys. Oh, a jammer, man.
Oh, yes. And now we are on to the next track of the album, Cheating on You.
Right.
Another tongue-in-cheek song, kind of. It's like, we'll both cheat on each other is kind of the message. Yeah, this is another short song on the album. It's under 3 minutes. And it's a bit redundant, and I appreciate the humor, but I can definitely see why this is the least streamed song on the album. Because it's a bit of a filler. It's just not as ambitious as the other songs on the album, especially after something like the previous track. They take you on this journey, this great piece they gave us before, and this is just kind of a paint-by-the-numbers rocker. And they're fine at that, but they were better than that earlier in the album. So, yeah, I think this is the gun to the head least favorite for me.
Even my first listen through this, I'm right with you. This one, the only way I can figure it, really trying to break down of why you would put this one on this album, but 2 right behind the previous track, is because of its polar opposite message, I guess, almost of like this fake freedom of love. As long as you're cheating on you, I'm cheating on you. And they switch it around for the last time, saying I'm cheating on me, which is really what I think is the bottom line of this whole entire we use the word tongue-in-cheek again, tongue-in-cheek rant about this fake freedom of love. But yeah, as it's a quick banger. I'm glad it was a shorter track, because for me, it's the one that doesn't fit. You said it the best. It's not to the level of the rest of this album.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it could kind of work as a bit of a palate cleanser in between 2 of the more ambitious songs, I guess, but still, it's an odd fit.
Yeah, if you're searching for a palate cleanser, I say okay, but it's enough of a rocker that you don't get to take a breath and cleanse your palate, I feel like. You know what I'm saying? I think you hit it on the head when you said filler. And I hate to say that about this album, but I totally agree with you.
This is the one. Sorry, boys, but
sorry,
we can't have them all be winners, I guess.
Heard.
But now we're on to your track 7.
Oh, my bad. I'm sorry. This is not track 7, man.
Yeah, this fire, I'm not going to lie, I haven't heard this whole album, but I can't help but think of Paula Cole when I hear that title, because that's the name of her album with I Don't Want to Wait and Where Have All the Cowboys Gone.
Oh, This Fire is the name of that album?
Yes, I don't know the whole album, but, well, 2 bangers right there, but...
Heard that.
We're not talking about the hat. We're here to talk about this song, which sounds nothing like either of those. Yeah, this is about a wild lust, not a downtrodden sad lady. This is a wild lust. I don't think they're singing about Paula Cole here unless there's something she didn't tell us. But, yeah, this fire is out of control. They're gonna burn this city. And, I mean, yeah, they really pump you up with this one. This is just a great pump up song. And you just kind of want to jump up and down and scream it at the top of your lungs. But, well, you shouldn't in public scream, "We're going to burn this city." But if you hear this, you're tempted to. I better not put this on Touch Tunes ever. So, because if I do, I might get too enthusiastic.
There you go. There you go.
Because it does that.
It does.
And a few facts about this song. There's a few things here. So first off, for some reason, this was re-recorded for single release and retitled, with fire being 3 Fs. This fire. Yeah. I don't get why they did that. I don't think they even needed to re-record it, but... Have you listened to the Rich Costi version? I have. It's just a little bit tighter. In my opinion, it loses its luster being tighter. I agree. Yeah. I agree. This was fine the way it was. Yeah. And, yeah, there's that. But this song actually made an appearance this year. It was used as the theme song to an anime called Cyberpunk Edge Runners. And back in 2007, this was sampled in a song by Lil Wayne and Twista called Burn the City. I haven't heard that. I've never been much of a Lil Wayne fan, but... That's the next stamp on your hip-hop card. Oh! We'll see about that one. Unless you're challenging me. But... No, I'm always challenging you, but no, not there. Not there. Oh, okay. It's a take it or leave it song for me, that one. But oh, Burn This City? Yeah. Oh. It's no lollipop, I guess. We're getting off on a tangent. But anyway, this is another beloved song. This was the last single from the album. It was airplay and download only in the US and UK. 17 on the alternative charts, number 8 on the UK download chart. But it was actually the band's set closer until 2009, which perfect set closer. Fuck yeah. So, I mean, yeah, this is one. Oh, I could imagine this going off live. Oh, I can only imagine. I mean, this is how you close a set. I love it in the number 7 spot. This is, in my opinion, this is the anthem of the album. This is the anthem of the album. This is where the story of the album, in my opinion, takes this wild, like explosive, chaotic turn. And from here on is a different vibe. And I'll get to that when we go into the next song. But my words on this one is a driven, chaotic masterpiece. I love this song. When you talk about, and we laugh because we've heard it, but if our listeners have not heard this song, when we joke about it taking you over, and if you were to listen to it on the street, you would want to scream it out. There's no way. This song drives, period, and really crushes, especially in a number 7 spot for me. Oh yeah, I completely agree. Though I think it also would have worked as an album closer too. Agreed. The set closer and the album closer definitely would have worked as a closer. Maybe I don't know about this album, but it is. It has the power of an ender like that. That's what I mean, basically. Yeah. I think alternately it could have worked, but regardless, this fire, awesome. We enjoy it. And now we are on to track number 8, Darts of Pleasure. Actually, the band's lead single, which seems kind of crazy in hindsight. The only reason this was before Take Me Out was just because it was recorded first. That's really what it was. And yeah, as I mentioned, this did make the UK top 50, which they were surprised to have gotten that far. This is a song about seduction. This one, I'm not gonna lie, first time I heard this song, I absolutely hated it. I thought, this guy is such a douche. He just thinks he can do whatever he wants to this girl. Like, what a fucking prick. That was what I was thinking. I was like, this guy, But then I saw what they were going for, the seduction, like, oh, okay, that makes a bit more sense. So I don't hate it now. It's not my favorite on the album, but I don't completely hate it like I did on the first listen. But yeah, it's grown on me. It definitely shouldn't have been the first single, but I guess it's what they had at the time. So I don't know.
I wonder if it's what they had at the time or if it fit somewhat of the sexiness vibe of the 2000s at this point, as far as really on a not even like on a top level, you know, maybe it felt sexy to them. This song for me is a sexy song, period. I talked about the way that this album moves. For me, this is where this album starts to get super sexy. We get real sexual throughout the next couple of pieces on this album, and this starts it off really awesome. The darts of pleasure inside of the album are described as these poisonous words, which gives an ironic take to the darts of pleasure, especially inside of this seduction for me. But I mean, you talk about lines like "you can feel my lips undress your eyes," and even when that's happening, the song is doing this almost stripping down of itself to a very minimal piece, and the drums just going, and then a hard stop, boom, and back into it like a raging guitar riff. This is a super sexy one for me. The Super Fantastic. My name is Super Fantastic at the end. Sang in German was always fun for me because we go back to like not having the lyrics. Who knew what that said? But we were having a ball with it, jumping around. But yeah, I always loved this sexy romp for me.
Yeah, well, this may be a sexy romp, but you were not lying. Things get sexy at this point, and in my opinion, the sexy song of the album's the next one, track number 9, Michael. And this was actually based on a true story. Alex Caprano said it was about 2 of his male friends hooking up one night. So, yeah, this is the gay love song of the album. This guy is lusting for Michael, and he does not hold back. He describes it quite beautifully, actually, but there's no denying what he's going for. There's no innuendo here.
It is. It's after our seduction song of Darts of Pleasure. Now we move on to, like you said, something that was taken right out of their interactions with their friends. And not only was it happening, in their lives, but it was happening at like a crazy Disco X, right? So for me, the feeling of this club happening around is right there in the sound of the song, the chaoticness of it. And I really love the way this story is told throughout this narrative because you can't help but be right there in it. Whether it's guy, girl, whatever, you can't help being inside of the way this person beautifully tells it, like you said, but is just feeling it throughout this song. Who was it? It was Alex Petridis said, you simply don't get songs like Michael very often in current rock music, and you don't. It's something that I would be hard pressed to find something that really moved me as far as first listen automatically the way Michael moved me. And we're like I said, we're in the epitome of the sexualness of this album throughout the song. Such a great one.
Yes, and this was actually the 4th single from the album, and it was a top 20 hit in Finland, Scotland, and the UK. This didn't chart in the US. I'm not surprised. We are in a very conservative point in the US's history in 2004. So, yeah, this isn't surprising that this didn't cross over to the mainstream in 04, but you know what? If you got it, you got it, and great if you did. That's what I have to say about it.
I heard. That's real. Yeah. I never hear this song out, but I always picture it being played. It's that kind of, I won't say a club anthem, but it's that kind of sexy dance song that you don't have to know this is Franz Ferdinand to get down with it.
Yeah, I'm sure this is played at many a gay bar in Scotland and England, I would say. Maybe not the US, but I could see that being the case, but I wouldn't know. I've never been to a gay bar, so...
They're probably playing Michael.
I hope they are.
I hope
say
they are
that
too.
Right now.
'Cause that shit rocks. God damn, it's a good song.
Yes. And we keep that kind of sexy vibe going with the penultimate track on the album, Come On Home, which is another disco-y song. And this is another element of sexuality. This is the longing for it. This guy, he wants his ex back. He wants his ex to come home. And so this represents another chapter, an aspect of that. And I think that's really cool that they touched on multiple facets of sex for these three songs. We got different experiences with each one, and they're all relatable to many people. So I think that was great that they did that.
Yeah. You talk about that love, calling that love back, that a cappella that ends the song, the beautiful Come On Home. You can feel that yearning inside of that a cappella for me.
Yeah. I don't like this as much as others on the album, but I think it's fine and it has a good melody. I'll say that. So, yeah, Come On Home. There we go. And they're bringing it on home with the final track now, 40 Feet. This is possibly a reference to a promontory in Dublin, Ireland.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a massive land above water. And it's a popular spot where families swim. It hasn't always been allowed for children to be at, but it is these days. So that was something fun to learn. I don't recall going past that when I went to Ireland, but something cool to learn.
That's wild. I always thought this song was about, in my head, it was the end of this wild ass romp and party and craziness. I always thought it was about jumping off a bridge with the saltwater scaling his skin and only 40 feet left below. That's what I always equated it with. That's wild.
I mean, I can see that, but I would hate to think that. I don't think it's that dark. I think some people think this band is dark. I mean, there's people that actually think Take Me Out is about wanting to get shot, and I think that's horrible.
No, I thought it was a fitting end of a run, or even the contemplation of standing over and looking at the water.
Yeah, I didn't. Oh, go ahead.
No, I'm saying that's wild because I didn't look it up, but that was what I had always thought.
I mean, I believe what I looked up because I don't think this is dark enough to be about possible suicide. So, yeah. I know some people do think that, though. If they think Take Me Out's about wanting to get taken out as in shot, I think that's horrible that people think that. But, yeah, I listened to a great podcast, one of my favorite podcasts, Song versus Song. They did an episode called Take Me Out versus Float On, where they compared the two songs.
I saw you pop that up, and I want to listen to that because I go back to that. You know, Modest Mouse was there, and that was really what a lot of people were comparing this to.
Yeah, they said these were the songs of that era, and a third one actually of this time, which it didn't last long, was The Killers' Somebody Told Me, also a classic.
Heard.
But, of course, they actually had a huge mainstream hit the following year with Mr. Brightside, but
Heard.
We're not here to talk about The Killers, so...
Regardless of the meaning, period, this one is a great ender, musically, in my opinion, and it has this almost day-in-the-life chaotic crescendo at the end that literally puts a seal on the album, and I really enjoy that.
Yeah, I think it's nice that they went with a more downbeat closer. I think that was a wise decision on their part. I don't like this as much as other songs on the album, though. It just isn't as dynamic, and that's why a part of me wishes This Fire ended it on a real bang like that, or even close to it, but it makes sense for them to have gone with a slower song, but maybe they just didn't do that as well at this point in time. Yeah, this one, it's not my favorite. I didn't hear A Day in the Life in it, personally.
Heard.
But I didn't love it, but I think it was smart to end the album with something more low-key.
Indeed.
And
all right, so you get to give the score this week. What do you got? What do you got on this guy?
B plus.
All right.
Because I do think there is some filler on it for me, but the songs that I like, I really do enjoy a lot. And I think they had some really cool concepts and ideas here. And I do think this was cool for them to do. I enjoyed doing this one. It was a bit different for me, not something I would have expected, but I think some of these songs will definitely be going into my rotation. So I'm going to say B plus, and I do feel as an album, it flows together really well.
There you go. We're back on in sync again. I'm going B plus on this album, even though it stands the test of time for me, and the musicianship, of course, cannot be denied. It doesn't feel as full to me as it did back then. And we go to tracks, like Come On Home and Cheating on You for me that don't hit anywhere near where they used to for me. A stellar album by far, and I say a must listen, but anybody who hasn't heard this one, this is a really unique and cool listen if you're out there for it. But yep, B plus for me as well.
All right, there we have it. Franz Ferdinand. What's your favorite track on the album?
Dark of the Matinee. Number 4 track is my jam. I love Fire. I love this album, period. But like I said before, something about Dark of the Matinee has always spoke to me. I enjoy it 100%, and it's the one that I would show, even to this day, to people that hadn't listened to the whole album or even know who Franz Ferdinand was or is. I would say, here you go, check this one out.
I'm going with the popular answer. My favorite song on the album's Take Me Out. Just a brilliantly constructed song that could still be a hit today.
Most definitely.
And now we've done our second album of the 2000s, but now it's time to announce our next one. So this poll was a little unique because at the beginning of this month, I was supposed to attend a music festival called Ocean's Calling down in Ocean City, Maryland, but sadly the weather decided that it wouldn't happen and the festival was canceled. But in honor of this festival that didn't happen, I decided to create a 2000s poll with albums from artists that were scheduled to appear at this festival. So with that, our options were the Dave Matthews Band's Big Whiskey and the Goo Grux King, Alanis Morissette's Under Rug Swept, Jimmy Eat World's Bleed American, and Cage the Elephant's self-titled debut. And we did get a winner. Actually, this was the most surprising poll result I've seen in the polls that we've done. I was not expecting this. But this coming week, we will be discussing Jimmy Eat World's Bleed American.
Oh, okay. All right.
I guess some people want us to go a little bit emo, I guess. I don't know, but
let's
that
go.
Was one I was not expecting. That you don't sound too thrilled about that.
I don't know it. I know them. I know the name. In all honesty, I don't know it, but let's explore the 2000s all over the place. I'm down with that. Let's see what the vibe was.
Yeah, we obviously know the big hit off of it, but what's beyond that?
What's the big hit off it?
The Middle. Everybody knows that song.
I probably know it, but not.
You'd know it if you heard it. Everybody's heard that song. It's
next week. I'll be like, I'll do that.
Yeah, it's just omnipresent. Admittedly, that song, and I was expecting Dave to win that one, but he did not.
I love Dave. That's a long ass Dave album. All 4 albums are exciting, period. I love that we get a chance to do a shout out to the Ocean's Calling not happening. So regardless, let's see the next part of the 2000s. Yeah,
a bit of a different vibe than we've done before, but I'm excited to do something different.
You know what? It might be the first time. Have you ever listened to that album?
No.
I've never listened to the album. It might be the first time neither of us have listened to the album before.
Oh,
That's cool. I like that. I like that.
This is going to be a fun one.
2 blind listens. Let's see what we got here.
Oh, yes. But in the meantime, while you're waiting for our trip to the middle, you can subscribe to this podcast wherever you're listening to it and follow us on Facebook and Instagram. Also, be sure to give us a nice review and rating because that helps us out a lot. And in the meantime, try not to take yourself out too much and stay safe.
Peace.